It's my second time to be here. Came here when I was bringing Mark, and we dropped him. I didn't walk through the campus, but I stayed here for 2 nights, and then I left and went back to Kenya. All along, he's been coming alone. He came without dreadlocks. Now he's dreadlocks. And I told him I brought him as a boy. Now I've come to pick a man. So it's nice to be around. For me, it's both holiday and want to celebrate his graduation. And I hadn't expected to meet you, but I think it's a pleasure to meet Kenyans in a foreign land. Not Kenyans, but Africans in a foreign land. We tend to be more tight when we are out of Africa. But when we are in Africa, we fight a lot. We don't want to see one another. It's very interesting. When you get Kenyans in US, they're very friendly, very nice. The Kikuyus, the Luos stay together. When they're in Kenya, the Luos don't want to see the Kikuyus. It's very interesting. But that's African mentality. We are a very rich society. We are a very rich continent. I think sometimes you only see the potential of Kenyans when, sorry, for Africans, I'm sorry, I'm saying Kenyans because I'm a Kenyan, but you tend to see it when we are out. When we're in Africa, we are a totally different breed. But I want to congratulate you because I know you chose the best. This is one of the best universities in Asia, if I'm not wrong. Looking at the ranking, when I brought Mark, I think the number 75, the 75th best technical institution in the world or in Asia. The ranking was very good. So I think you've got the best education, and I want to congratulate you. And I really hope those that have not been able to finish, we hope that you'll be able to finish. And much more, think about coming to develop Africa. I was talking to Mark, and he doesn't seem to be having too much interest in staying in Kenya, which is very unfortunate. You know, if I had the opportunity, I would really, ask him to come back, because we are coming from a continent that is ravaged by so many things. It's tribalism, hate, bad leadership. You call it. And I have just come from Guinea, looking at the forests. They're hardly able to grow. You come from Rwanda, is it Rwanda? And I look at the mountains in Rwanda, beautiful. I've been to Rwanda, I think, twice. It's a beautiful, very, very nice. You come to, from Uganda, bananas are growing anywhere in the forest, everywhere. We come from a continent that is so endured by natural resources. I think when you tell an African that Africa is the richest continent in the world, they don't want to believe it. They want to come to UK and US and so on and so forth. But in terms of natural resources, I think we are the richest. We own half of the gold reserves in the world. Half. I was telling somebody, a long time ago, money was actually measured by gold. Money was measured by gold. Forget about all this paper currency that has come, but money was basically measured by gold. How much gold you have, that is how much money you have, And that means most of the gold that we have in the world, including Dubai, where we have the souk, much of that gold is actually African gold, Congo, so on and so forth. And look at Congo, honestly. Who wants to go to Congo? Kabila's messed it up. Mobutu messed it up. Kenya is now trying to mentor Congo pole with the new leadership. But, you go to Congo and I'm told you can walk into the forest and collect mercury. Yet you look at we Africans, it's very unfortunate. One time I went to, I think I was, where was I? I was in Dubai. And I walked into a restaurant and I sat down hoping to be served. And nobody came to serve me because of my black skin, Some Zulus came in and they were served. So I had to, I had to beg. Hey, come and serve me. And the guy who came and served me, he looked at me and asked me, what do you want? I told him what I wanted, but he wasn't very enthusiastic to serve me. Because, the black skin is it's not very welcome, Nobody wants to, nobody would cherish black skin. But I think we are a blessed people. Now that this is a Bible study, I think when you read Bible, I'm not a very good student in Bible, but I tell people that even God, when the entire world, and I think that Israel, when Israel had had uh, had uh, had problems, when they had famine, um, we were able to feed them from Egypt. Remember the story of Joseph? Able to feed them from Egypt. And I think anywhere that God had ever wanted to hide anything, including Jesus Christ, when they wanted to kill him, they hid him in Africa, Egypt. Moses was hid where? In Egypt. There's something about Africa that I think has not been able to come out, And so some of us who have had the privilege of going out of Africa to study, I keep on insisting that as much as you may want to, live your life outside and go to Canada, I want to go to Canada. But think about Africa. Think about your people. Let's go back and develop Africa. We need to change Africa, whether it's now or future. Africa is much more beautiful than. Look at the climate. I come from Eldoret, and I'm told it's one of the best climates in Africa. All these runners come. The altitudes are beautiful. The climate is excellent. Here, you look at the way she's sweating. It's horrible. It's horrible, isn't it? It's horrible. It's horrible. So when I'm just encouraging us. I think there's something that God put in Africa, and I think it's wealth. There's so much wealth. I was talking to some people in Kenya because they harvest so much of timber from the Congo, the mahogany tree. And do you know that up till today, the Congo forest has not been shaken? We've harvested for years, but it's still not shaken. If you go to the Congo River, fish dies because of old age. Lake Victoria, my friend, we've harvested fish until now we don't have enough fish. Omondi, is it Omondi? We are fighting for fish in Migingo between Museveni and but go to the Congo Basin, fish dies because of old age. It's not harvested. We have resource. The Congo forests. If you go to Cameroon, last time when we had a plane fall, was it Kenya Airways?
Yes.
When we had a crash I was in Cameroon, Kenya Airways. I lost a friend in that plane. And they took like a week to be able to locate where the actual crash was. And trees that I think have been there since the world was created. 50 meters, 50 meters of tall trees that you can't be able to access the place. It was very difficult for them to access that forest. What am I saying? Africa is blessed, but also a problem, poor leadership. We're greedy, we want everything for ourselves. I want to be rich and I want my brother to be poor. If we transfer the attitude we have here to our people, I think we'll be far, right or wrong. Yeah, because here you're friendly, at Rwandese there's no problem sitting next to Ugandan. Ugandan has no problem with a Kenyan. A Kenyan has no problem with a Nigerian, but you wait until we cross the Indian Ocean and get to land in Africa. Then, I tell the Ugandans, we don't want to see you here. Go back to Uganda. The Rwandese tells you this is the border. Don't pass the Gatuna border. Huku ni kwetu, nyinyi mkae huko, isn't it? It's horrible, and it's poor leadership. Poor leadership. The generation that began to change Africa were people who went out. The Kenyatta, the Kwame Nkrumah, that's a group that went out and they studied out. I think they were able to get a paradigm shift and bring, they got back to Africa. Even Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, these are fellows who studied outside, and they finally came back to Africa and changed. And I'm trying to encourage us here today. I know that we all have ambitions, we all have our aspirations, but I think you need to think back about home, where you come from. Even though you may want to work in the US for another 10, 15, 20 years. But retire back in Africa and be buried in African soil. Mm-hmm. You come back and contribute to Africans. Let's see what you can do. For you Kenyans, the problems you're facing right now. Our economy is actually at the brink of collapse. We've borrowed over borrowed, Our politics is in shambles. I'm sure you understand that. We are pulling in different directions. I was just watching news right now, and Moses Kuria. I'm sure you don't know Moses Kuria, but one of the MPs in Nairobi was saying that we are at the brink of a revolution. Why? It's because if you go to Kenya today, Chinese have invaded us like you know, what would you? Chinese, thank you, madam. Chinese have invaded us. If you go to a place called Gikomba, in China, and I'm sorry for those that don't come from Kenya, but Chinese are selling mitumba. You know, these are second-hand clothes. In fact, the MP right now said, you know, they've arrested one of our MPs right now. I think it's just hardly, he must be now in DCI, at the CID headquarters. But it's because he said that we need to get the Chinese out of Kenya, because they're everywhere. They're roasting maize in the street. They have transferred their industries to Africa. And we are slowly being disenfranchised. You can't compete. If I have a factory in Guangzhou or Beijing, and then I have an outlet in Gikomba, what advantage do I have against the African person? You know, for me, I can import and manufacturing, but I'm selling against this black skin, you know. And it's all because of poor leadership. Africa right now is being ravaged like, you know, by Chinese. And I'm telling you, Chinese are horrible. By the time you guys will be here for another 20, 30 years, in Kenya we have 44 tribes. You have a 45th tribe, Chinese Kikuyu. I don't know how you call that. I'm told when a Kikuyu marries a Kamba, you give birth to a cucumber. Chinese and Kikuyu would be what? Chikuyu. The Somali economy was performing 100 times better than the Kenyan economy. You know, during Said Barre, when Said Barre was president, it was awesome, and they have huge deposits of oil in Somalia. We have deposits of oil in Turkana right now, and we have gas in Lamu. And trust me, when we start harvesting that, then you begin to see interests, and people are going to fight. You come from Nigeria. And I think you're one of the leading oil producers in Africa. But I'm told if you go to Lagos, there are generators all over, isn't it? Because there's no fuel, there's no electricity, because some guy has to import generators. And you prefer to go and sell that oil outside than use it in Nigeria. And it's very expensive. And the South, I think the war is it in the South or the North? People are fighting the North because of oil, isn't it? It's horrible. You know, look at Africa. And sometimes you feel very shameful when you know, you're called an African. He was just telling me that if you apply for visa to go to Turkey, you get it after 1 month.
I don't know how much that.
Oh, you try Nigeria. Nigeria. Kenyan, you'll be given one day. You know, we have problems. What am I saying? I'm just giving you the story of Africa. The story of Africa is a good story, but also a bad story. The story of Africa is a sad story, but then it has a beautiful side. We have beautiful climate, beautiful resources, culture. You know, we have very rich culture, right or wrong. We have it, isn't it? And we have perfect brains. By the way, some of the best doctors in America are actually African doctors. I'm told that the white skin sometimes has to get seed from Africa to be able to get the best products of human beings. You know, they're struggling to get the black seed. You know, blackness, because the blackness has some godly values, has some. She's saying amen. You know.
It's called the melanin.
The
melanin.
The melanin.
Yes.
Hallelujah. What's this about us that we just can't be able to get continent organized. What is this? Have you asked yourself those questions? Burundi is at war, isn't it? What is this that we can't? When I look at the South, I look at the South, and if you go to Durban, come to South Africa, come to Joburg and go to Pretoria, as you come down towards Zimbabwe, it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful land when we had the De Klerks and Pickbother as president. When we handed this over to Mandela, and the country just began to go down. Although Mandela was celebrated because he had this national, he was celebrated because of fighting for the African renaissance in South Africa. But in terms of building South Africa, he failed. Mandela gives to some guy called who? He gave it to huh? Yeah, he gave it to Thabo Mbeki. Thabo Mbeki gives it to, is it Zuma or Zuma is busy marrying women all over and celebrating, and I really hope the president today here, the current president is Ramaphosa, would be able to bring that country back to what it was. Look at what's his name, Zimbabwe, not Mobutu, Mugabe. And some of us have been praying that God will take his soul to heaven earlier than, because these are people who have been have lived not to develop their people, but they have lived to ravage nations and mess up the economy. Zimbabwe was a beautiful economy, extremely beautiful economy, but this economy has been brought to its knees because of one man. And even your friend Museveni, there's nothing much that he's doing in Uganda. Uganda is. It's been a beautiful thing. I respect you. He's a dictator. Your president, isn't it? Kagame, isn't it? I respect him. I respect him. But maybe it's because you've come from the pain of war, isn't it? The pain of war. But I think Kagame is right now a respectable leader in the world. I have gone to your city, and you guys, your economy is improving, although held by the international community much. But you're improving. The national culture is beginning to be built, which is very good. And it's a nice place for investment, isn't it? It's cool, isn't it? But I think generally we have problems. And I really hope that you as Africans can have opportunity to go back to Africa and invest, and make sure your children, if you happen to have children, don't let them just study in Africa, get them out, and then they bring them back. You get me? Because our education system is in a mess. My other son, he should have been here, but I think he's suited enough. I'm a choker. I took him to a university called Kenyatta University when he wanted to do petroleum engineering, and I took him round. I took him round, and he went round, and these guys, they had a professor saying he's a petroleum engineer, and this is the climate of this place, petroleum engineer. And we went through the university, and they were charging, I think, 30,000 per term. 30,000 would be how many dollars per term? $300. Huh? $300, isn't it? $300 per term. That's what they were charging. It was very affordable. So I asked, where is the lab? Because you're doing petroleum engineering. Have you graduated any students? They said, no, we haven't. We are just starting. But we are in our third year. We have one more year to graduate. But then I asked, where is your practical lab? And they had nothing. And I tried to investigate what are the qualifications of the professor who is in charge of the department. He was a geologist, a retired government geologist. But you are training petroleum engineers. Then we, asked my son, go to the internet and search for a university wherever he gets in the world. I want to compare the fees. And I found a university in Australia. Then I got a few of them in America and so on and so forth. But there is not any university in the world renowned that was charging less than $1 million shillings for petroleum engineering. $1 million versus 30. Versus 30,000. That is $10,000 versus $300. It actually gives you the quality of a education, isn't it? And so imagine if I took him through that university, and today he's telling me I am petroleum engineer. You get me? Degree in petroleum engineer. It's horrible. But you guys, God has blessed you. You've had opportunity to get the best education. Please come back and invest in Africa.
You have different abilities and you have different focus and different dreams. And that is core in our life. Our influence is in what we have. So many times I challenge people, go sit down and meditate. We Christians like going for retreats. But much more so is to hear from God. But why don't you go for retreat also and understand yourself also? And then you have a reason to thank God for who you are and ask Him to empower you to achieve what you can through who you are. Because God was not mean. He gave each of us a gift, a talent, and then creates a highway, which like now you have in Cyprus. I mean in METU. Creates a highway for you to achieve certain skill and knowledge. And it's for a reason and a purpose. And it's not selfishness. We've been discussing a lot of the issue about selfishness. We don't value one another, and we don't value ourselves. And an aspect of selfishness comes in. But what God gives us is not for selfish gain. It's supposed to be for all of us. That's why God is a generous giver, and we as a family also believe when you're a generous giver, you will always receive. You will always receive. And so for what you have and what you can do, be generous. Derek has been generous with his time. May God give him back for what he has given us. From the good, wise book, I would say I love it, Proverbs. I want to just read a few captions. Chapter 1, as wise sayings. And I like it because it starts with a statement, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. He was a king and he thought it's time to discuss some things. And I believe all of us, if Uhuru was here, our president, you'll be keen to hear what he wants to say. Positions have ways in which they are respected, and it's like you tap something from that. And when you read Proverbs, I would want you to look at it more from what is the king saying and how beneficial is it to me. And it says, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. You know, there is wisdom, instruction, understanding. To receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. That's what is lacking in the world, by the way. We no longer have wise leaders. We no longer have just leaders or people as a whole. We are unable to make the right judgments, and equity is not there. When you talk of selfishness and partiality and the rest, it's an aspect of equity, and that's why all of us, those who work in corporate world and all that, you get to hear about equity all the time. And it's very important. A wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsel. I want to jump to verse 8. My son, all of us, Vicky included, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Now, father and mother is not necessarily your biological parents. We all have mentors, and we need to seek for mentors. Be a mentee in your field, in your life. That is your father, that is your mother. People who can give you direction, and people who can give you instructions and help you learn how to intertwine and interact with things. Some of us hibernate. At this age, you really need not hibernate. You need to be to open up. Don't maintain your status quo. Our family is like this, or Kenya is like this, Rwanda is like this. No, no, no. Just break out and learn from somebody. Have a father, have a mother, and listen. And it's very encouraging to know fathers give instructions, mothers give laws. So there's a difference between your mentors very many times. Yes, I'm reading from the wise counsel. Yeah, forsake not the law of thy mother. Okay, if I go back to real life, it's true. From the time you were born, I think the person who told you, don't do this and do this, was your mother many times. And a bit of a pinch somewhere. And a bit of this. What were those? Those were laws. Where you can pass, where you cannot pass. There's a lot of do's and don'ts. But many times, instructions, you are in school and you know what instructions is all about. Pita hapa, enda hapa. Hata instructions nimepata leo. For those who are Kenyans, they can understand Kiswahili. All of us have listened the wise instructions we've been given. I mean, how to just, yeah, I won't go into details of that. But then I finish with verse 10 onwards. Okay, maybe I read just Isaiah 8. For they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. My son, and the verse children included, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. I can preach with a bias of Christianity, but I don't want to take that. I want to say sinners are basically people who are anti what you should morally do. Because even atheists have morals. And I would want to say, finally, by what I will read through the rest, you'll go and interpret. If they say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood, that is murder. Let us lack privily for the innocent without cause. We want to put a challenge on the way for the innocent, isn't it? There are many of us who trap people. You even want to do wrong to one another and bring down a nation. Let us swallow them up alive. Now, this is counsel you're getting from sinners, those with no morals, isn't it? Let us swallow them up alive as the grave. That means kill them. And whole as they go down into the pit. We shall find all precious substances. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Now that is what is happening in Kenya. Spoil, corruption. You're stealing, you're robbing. And that is what we are supposed to be able not to, if we are going to give back something profitable. You don't go and sell your country to fill your house with spoil and then finish your country. Al-Shabaab, part of the team is we ourselves. We have enough to lose. I'm sorry to say, I'm a Kikuyu, but I know there are some Kikuyus who are part of that, and they're the ones leaking out information. So those are the guys we don't want. We are not asking you go out there and then bring, the negative things. Bring the wise things home, and let's be people who are supposed to be. And cast in thy lot amongst us, let us all have one path. My son, walk not thou in thy way with them, refrain from thy foot from their path. I have finished. God bless you and wish you well.